This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this.
Hello. Niiamah Ashong here. Today I'm feeling really good. I'll be honest. My body feels good. I'm like, life is progressing as it should. I actually have, I came into this week thinking that it'd be one that was full of actually a lot of dread and anxiety about how can I get everything right? And what ended up taking place was actually a focus less on getting things correct, and more of a focus on just building out myself, working on my nervous system, and recommitting to being with discomfort and pain in a different way. And interestingly enough, the day has been anything other than uncomfortable and painful, even though that was what I had been creating it to be in my mind for a while. I say all that here to bring us into space here, and just to be real with you. This is what's flowing through me right now. I recognize that. I want to play that out. My name is Niiamah Ashong. I am the founder of Outliers Edge, where at the end of the day, we are co-creating a world of difference. The first time I've said that in a public fashion like this, and it feels good, it feels true, and we'll continue to let that evolve. I look at a world of difference as a way of bringing in your difference and having that shine out in the world, each person owning what it is that makes them different in a meaningful way, so that we can have a new way of looking at leadership beyond what we've seen and experienced in the past. And I think in that sense, it's really appropriate and serendipitous that today I'm talking to someone who's really representing that for me. I'll let him know why in just a bit here. But we have Jamin Heppell in conversation with us today. Jamin, it's an absolute, I legitimately mean it, it's an absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you, to be in space with you, really. How are you?
Yeah, Niiamah, absolutely stoked to be here. And yeah, man, it feels like no time has passed, brother.
Yeah. One of the things I want to bring into this space here is an acknowledgement. We're going to have some, everything's been working fine with me and hearing you. Internet's been good. If anyone's watching this later on, they might see some kind of disconnection on there. It's because you're out in an amazing place in the world. Would you mind sharing just generally a bit about where you are, what brought you there?
Yeah, so right now I'm in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. This is one of my favorite places in the world. I live a very nomadic lifestyle. And so as I travel, I'm often feeling into the energy of a geographic space. And there are just a few really sacred spots around the world where my body just goes, oof, this feels like home. And Lake Atitlan is one of those. And this year's been particularly transient. So dropping in here for the next 6 weeks feels really special. So that's where I'm calling in from today.
Awesome, Jamin. Yeah, just as we were talking, I was like, oh, I know this thing here, and it's completely special, and at the same time, it's so you. And I think at the core of what we do here in these conversations is to make sure we see you, we celebrate you, and value you as much as we can. So thanks for bringing that in, Jamin. I'd love to take some time to just share who you are to me in this moment here. I recognize as I say this, a wellspring of what I am associating with joy and happiness is coming through. There's just I feel this tingling sensation inside is coming right underneath my rib cage, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to share this with them. I want to share this with them.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to say, but I think I'll just let it flow out in the sense of you're one of the people on this planet that I respect the most. I feel that. And when I say these people on the planet, I actually want to even put it even more one of the men on this planet that I respect the most. I feel that in being with you, I've learned more about the space that a man can can fill with in many different capacities, and it has brought out a deeper desire, deeper longing, and also just a deeper pursuit of what I can be beyond the intellectual, beyond the powerful coach, beyond the entrepreneur and mission movement leader. I'm like, how can I show up more and bring more of a different type of energy, an energy that have felt kind of aloof to me out into the world. And when I spend time with you, when I think about you, it brings me to that. You said one word to me years ago just shifted the trajectory that I was on. I saw you in person. I was happy to see you, and I gave you a hug. And I love my hugs. Like, people have told me they have good hugs. And when I gave you one, I wanted you to know how excited I was to see you. And I gave you a really strong hug. And you whispered one word. You just said, "Soften, soften, brother, soften." And it was that, like, I approached life with that mentality there, where it's like, hey, and actually without having to hold on strong or show that, like, that there's that you're really there, you can just be present, and you can be fully immersed without having to go, having to exert, and I really do feel that's one of the most important lessons that I've had, and one of the most important things that I still carry on with me here. So I appreciate you. It walks around with me. You walk with me, and so to be in conversation with you right now, it's lighting up my world. And now, like, to be in conversation with you and to share you with my world, I'm like, people need to know this person, and it's just, the world would be better off. And so I'm happy we're here. That's my truth right now.
Receiving all of this, brother, and I remember that moment distinctly. It is a hug that I'll never forget, and the special sacredness of a Niiamah hug. I remember that, and I distinctly remember that moment, man, when I whispered in your ear, and the fact that still sits with you today. I think it's meaningful, of like how we continue to carry one another forth in our own spirit, even though we don't spend tremendous amount of time in shared space. But thank you, brother, receiving all of that, and very excited to be here and share space with you and bring my full self with you and into your community.
Thanks for that. Let's do this. So I shared a bit about who you are to me, and that's real. And I want to give you a chance to share a bit about yourself here. Share whatever you'd like, whether, like, we don't need titles here, but if anything you want to share personally, professionally, let's just help people get a chance to see you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, man. Yeah, so just keeping it relatively concise. I describe myself as a leadership coach, and my big thing is about supporting people and guiding people to live in alignment. And what I mean by that is to live congruent with their truth. So it's this notion that inside all of us is a deeper knowingness and a deeper truth. And what I do is support people to distinguish what that truth is, access that truth, and then determine what's in the way of that. So clear what's in the way of living congruent with that truth, and then exploring the energetic and pragmatic approaches to bringing that truth and living and materializing that inner truth. And I call that living in alignment. And so we do this through an adventurous leadership, transformational leadership development company called Mountains and Marathons. And so we facilitate these epic transformational leadership programs, specifically the Align Leadership Program that goes for 6 months. And it's facilitated online, but then graduates with our members running a marathon or climbing a mountain in epic parts of the world, such as Mount Kilimanjaro, or a marathon in Patagonia, or hiking to Everest Base Camp, or the marathon in outback Australia. We go to all these extraordinary places around the world, both to facilitate the integration and consolidation of the work that's been done over 6 months and putting physical challenge to the test, as well as leveraging the power of separation and immersing themselves in a community of like-minded people to do deep and meaningful work and really get clear on how we bring a deeper sense of alignment into our life in an everyday context and capacity.
I love to let that even just, like, washing over me, because as you say that, there were several things that just, like, lit up about what you said. The word epic right now has its own special meaning to me right now, and so there's a big part of me that just went alive with that. I was like, oh yes, epic, just by its nature. So let's keep growing here. Like, I think there's something in this conversation where I just feel really like, I'm like, we can go anywhere, right? We can really go anywhere here. And from my standpoint here, I'm just like, I'm in this space of acknowledging a few different things, acknowledging the recent transformations that have been taking place, and you talked about like epic transformations here. So I think I'm going to give some space to that. As I mentioned earlier, there's something that's present for me, and I think if I bring this into our space as a place for us to jump off, we can see where things go, and we'll take that. The other day, I was walking down the street, and I realized that in terms of the work that I was doing, using your word, I was out of alignment. There was a part of this that I think about being in integrity. That's my thing, like bringing my wholeness, being whole in everything I do. And I recognized that I was going through and introducing myself as the founder of Outliers, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. And what felt out of alignment, what felt incongruent, and what felt like out of integrity there was, I'm like, but have we really been going for the leaders who are really shaping the next era of humanity? Or is this just a tagline that is being said? And I do believe that any single person has that within them. But there was something that, like, as I was walking back, something just felt off within, and it led to a beautifully like succinct way of me just knowing, like, this is what I'm about. I'm co-creating a world of difference. That feels good. Right before we came on here, we talked about like a bit about like being in tune with what was happening inside of you, and I honestly realized like I would love to have that conversation. I know you have the tools around it. I know you have like some experience with it here, and I'd love to like create some space for us to have that conversation. And I'm coming in both as a learner. I'm bringing my curiosity and what's real for me in this moment toward us playing in this game. You good with that?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I love this.
Awesome. So why don't we take us to the moment that almost like started us off here? What was going on for you, where you said you noticed something, and then we'll jump off from there.
Beautiful. So as we were just having a brief conversation before we stepped into this recorded part, Niiamah, you said this conversation, we're going to get real, like we're going to sort of push up against that edge and meet things from the present and speaking into the future, as opposed to focusing too much on the past. And what was elicited inside of me in that moment was, I noticed it was like this injection of fear. Like there was like this fear reaction that occurred like just in my solar plexus, just beneath my heart. And in that moment, I was like, oh, what is that? And it was the experience of vulnerability, of like, oof, the possibility of being exposed, the possibility of like stuffing something up or making a fool of myself. Like that was kind of a lot of what was activated in that moment. And there was also a specific story that, a memory that showed up when I felt that physical sensation. And that was the memory of being on a call with a dear friend from back home in Australia. And it was in November of 2018. We're on a call, and we started the call, said hi, it was a couple of simple pleasantries. And then he said, Jamin, I've got something I need to clear with you. And I'm like, okay, I'm here, man, I'm present. And he said, yeah, I've noticed I hate you. And immediately, like this massive injection of like fear and insecurity and like, and deep vulnerability, like showed up in my space, similar to the experience that I had just in the lead up to pressing record here. And to close it out, I said, okay, got you, like share with me, what is it? like tell me more. And then he said, before you started traveling, we met, and you said that you would like to have a call with me once a month to maintain our friendship, as a cadence to maintain our friendship. And it's been 6 months and I haven't had a single text message from you or communication around us getting together. And so I wanted to clear that, because it's been showing up as like, I hate you in my system. And I didn't want to have this conversation without that being acknowledged. And in that moment, it was both deeply confronting and also a moment where I had to kind of breathe and compose myself to come back to a place where I could truly be present with the man I was speaking to and being in a conversation of possibility and actually being in connection with one another. And so I share that because when you said, we're going to get real here, I noticed that there was this kind of like fear reaction in me of like, Niiamah is going to share something like, not necessarily in the intensity of like, I hate you, but like, Jamin, there's some rich feedback that I want to give you, or there's something I want to clear with you. And just noticing that, there's something still there for me about being emotionally agile and receptive and having the somatic body that is willing to, that's able to and willing to be calm and present inside that kind of communication or invitation. And I received that from a place of like, this is good. This is me at my edge. Here's a space, a place for me to be able to look at, to cultivate a more expansive somatic body so I can be with more of life and more agile in adverse environments or adverse contexts. So yeah, man, that was kind of what showed up as we were leading into this call. And I think it's a meaningful conversation because there's a lot that can stem from that inquiry.
Thanks for bringing it in. Like as you were talking just now, one of the things that were going on through the back of my mind is, I wonder if that was yours or if that was me energetically like transmitting that to you, because we were dropping in right before we came in here, and there was something that happened in like, there was something you said at some point that just maybe that like shook me, and for me it was in the right in the center of my chest, like and I felt like this I would almost describe it like a spark, right? Like a shock or a spark that took place, and there was this flash. That's what it was. It was like a flash of like, am I going to be able to bring enough power to this conversation? Am I actually going to be on the level for what this conversation can be, or am I perpetrating a fraud? Or like those specific words, perpetrating a fraud, came in here. And so it's curious to me when you say this here. I'm like, I wonder how much of that was yours and how much of that was like put into the space with mine, because I do believe in like the energy, like transmission or the shared energy of the space together here. As I say that, I'm just going to just also come in here. As I say that, I recognize an expansiveness in the shoulders. Like I can feel myself arriving even more, and what it feels like there's an absence of pressure. Right, it's like there's an openness that was there, but there was almost, again, there's this standpoint of just being like of a freedom, but more in the sense of here, like there's an absence of pressure, like just a natural expansion that's taking place.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much for reflecting that. And independent as to whether what I was experiencing was something that was being projected energetically from you or not, the point being here, and especially how you speak into a deeper level of or an absence of pressure now being your experience, and a freedom in the shoulders that's opened up for you, is I listen to that and go, isn't this the magic of generating and cultivating a space of safety, a space of permission, where, inside this context, anything is welcome? Because the nature of what we just spoke into, as far as naming what is alive in our body and what is showing up for us in real time, there is a vulnerability in that. Like there's truth in it, and there's power in that truth. There's a vulnerability there, so that you and I are now able to descend, or go beneath that surface level and be in touch with what's real in this moment. And so, man, what a beautiful place for us to be able to dive and jive from here, because we're speaking to what's true and real and alive in this moment. And the next moment will be something different, and the next moment will be something different. But we've got a depth of awareness and an attunement with what's alive in our body, and a depth of emotional literacy, whereby we can actually not only distinguish the sensation, but bring language to that sensation. And that there is a magical place. It's a magical skill to cultivate, and it's a magical place to be able to get to in connection and communication with another brother, because again, like you and I just get to meet each other inside the abyss that is before us of the exciting adventure called life.
I'm like, as you're talking, I'm really in tune with like how refreshing it is to be able to start a conversation from this place. So, Jamin, a lot of the ways that I've chosen to live and operate and be in my leadership has been one that is, I will say, transparent, right? They or moving down the path of transparency. And I look at transparent, for me, transparent and vulnerability like aren't always the same thing, right? So I can share what's happening within me, and one might think that is me being vulnerable, but that's just me being transparent. That's just me sharing what's happening within me, right? So I love to call out this component of, I think what's excited me here is to be with someone who like understands like where that vulnerability lives, and chooses to run toward the vulnerability, as opposed to running away from it. There was someone I had met we were in a transformational experience. She said, I've never been in a room of people who actively seek to get triggered. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But like in this space here, it's like we're looking we're looking to be in conversation and be like, oh, that just brought something up in me. Like, let's get curious about that. Like I could have gone in this other way and ran from it, but instead I'm actually going to lean into that. And I just saw you like demonstrate that here. So I'd love to like hear anything else that like what comes to you as I share that.
Well, beautiful, man. I love that distinction of transparency versus vulnerability, because I think it's absolutely true that we can be transparent without experiencing vulnerability, because vulnerability means that there's some kind of uncertainty. Like there's an uncertainty on the other side of the interaction, or the what's alive, or what we're naming in this moment. But to communicate what's alive and true for you in the moment, knowing that on the other side of this is just nothing but complete presence and a man of love in touch with mission and all of these things that have you experience like who you are in this world, then simply communicating what's alive and true, that is transparency, versus vulnerability being this edge of like uncertainty on the other side, which I think also plays in this beautiful distinction that Brené Brown makes around vulnerability. And that's the distinction of being vulnerable versus doing vulnerability. Doing vulnerability is this practice of like sharing more of oneself, just sharing of oneself, almost like actually without bastardizing the distinction that we just made between transparency and vulnerability. Doing vulnerability is like it's giving of oneself freely, but it's not necessarily putting oneself on the line.
Yes.
And so in that, it's like, if I was to share more with you about a bit more about my history, so you get a deeper understanding of who I am and where I come from. Growing up in a little town, a town of 7,000 people, with two parents, then happy childhood. But, at the age of 17, my mum had an affair. She had a secret affair for 4 years. And then that kind of resolved, and I was supportive of their healing and coming together. And now mum and dad are in a thriving marriage. But it's like, I'm fully resolved and complete with that, like with that layer of vulnerability as far as like something that showed up in my life. There's nothing that I hold around that. And yet me sharing that can give people a sense of a deep level of touch. Just, okay, this guy's like been through some stuff, or, whatever it is that I might want to share about myself, but it's resolved internally here. So there's like, that can equal, we can look at that as transparency or doing vulnerability versus being vulnerable, which is where there's there's an edge there, and there's a not knowingness of what's going to fucking show up next, and how am I gonna be on the other side of this, or what's life going to look like on the other side of this. That's when we lean into that tender edge of transformation.
As you're talking, I could feel this smile that's just like creeping up on my face here. I'm just like, because I like I'm recognizing in this moment just how much how deeply I've been desiring to talk about this, right? And it wasn't present for me. It was kind of, it almost like, actually it existed as a story that I told myself that I wouldn't be able to find this. It's like I can't really talk about this because people wouldn't get
Sure.
it. The element of it being already resolved inside of you, as the difference that makes in terms of the uncertainty. To me, the word risk was coming up. Like, is there something at risk? There are times where I will share, and I'm like, there's nothing at risk for me. Whether you think better of me, whether you think less of me, whether I'm good, I'm fine.
Totally.
Like, this might be a big deal for
That's
you,
right.
but like, I'm good. This is
It ain't
my
for
life.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then it's funny because it's like sometimes it's the small things, it's the smallest things. And so I've recognized in myself here where well, two things actually, as I think about this in real time. One of them is a desire to find that edge once again, right? To be in spaces, to be in places where like just that flash comes up. That is enough. That spark is enough to say, oh, there's something here. I may or may not unpack it now, but I have a place to go and see where's one more place that like I can integrate this within me more. Where's one more place that I can like support my nervous system in this expansion here. And I'm very attuned to that in this moment here. Like at a certain point, maybe toward the end of this, we'll like go and explain some of like we'll talk about what we're doing. But for now, I want to just remain in the moment with you around this. And we can talk about some of the things that came up afterwards. But I'm just really like in the acknowledgement, realistically, of how happy I am to like think about this and to have a thought partner on it. That's what it is,
Yep.
So I want to in this moment I want to leave some space to see what else is coming through you on this here, and then we'll keep going. But yeah, from that way.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I think from my standpoint, I look at the conversation or the exploration of what does it mean to be successful? And a lot of people have I think there's like a very conformative and kind of traditional sense of what success is. But I define success as the capacity to respond and be with anything that shows up in life. The capacity to be with and respond powerfully from anything that shows up in life. And so then if we look at, okay, based on, and the reason why that is my definition of success is because I'm like, if I have the capacity to be with and respond powerfully to anything that shows up, well, what is there to be afraid of in this existence of being alive and exploring what it is to step into our fullness and our potential and live into our soul's calling as human beings? And so from that place, I then look at, okay, what is the pathway to success? And for me, it's simple. It is looking for the things that trigger the fuck out of me. It's looking at the things that ignite, that initiate so much fear in me, and then going, okay, being responsible, I don't want to overload the hell out of my system, but how can I find spaces and experiences that are going to ignite those moments in time when my hands tremble a little bit, where my heart beats a bit faster, where I sit on that fine edge where I don't know what's like, where there is a fear about what may result on the other side. And for me, the reason why that's important and that we're cultivating skills of being able to hold ourselves in those activating, fear-inducing moments is because these experiences, from my perspective, or in more colloquial terms, like getting outside our comfort zone, is a process of expanding our nervous system's capacity to hold and be with stuff. As I said earlier, building the somatic body that's able to navigate and be with more of life. And so, yeah, I guess from that standpoint, life kind of gets to become a game of going, this is interesting. And and even just to give a story that was a demonstration of this, like, last year I was undergoing a pretty hectic, I was in a really intense period because I had there'd been a legal case riding over my head for 3 years. Prior to running mountains and marathons, what I'm doing now, I used to run a youth leadership development organization called Game Changers, and we would run multi-day residential camps for young leaders in grassroots sporting clubs back home in Australia. And on my final camp that I facilitated as a director, there was this girl who had a terrible, severe knee injury. And at the time, we had a partner organization who took care of all the insurance and the back end administration so that our small organization could run these camps. And anyhow, so obviously this girl, she's had this really bad injury. We've responded appropriately and then forwarded her onto the partner organization to take care of the insurance. Now, it turns out that the organization, that the partnership agreement had expired 2 weeks before this camp. And so there wasn't a formal partnership in place. And so they actually legally didn't have a liability or responsibility to support this girl. And so naturally then, with all the surgeries and everything that transpired off the back of that, there became a legal case made, and I was being sued personally. And so that was sitting over my head for 3 years. And then it came to a complete resolution in October last year, where we actually managed to find a settlement before it went to the day before it went to the Supreme Court. And both the process of having this legal case riding over my head for 3 years, and then continually noticing what was alive for me, and the kind of the low-key fear and anxiety that continued to sit inside of me for those 3 years, but then being responsible for being in touch with it and clearing it until it built up to a certain point where I was like, oh no, this is affecting me, and then clearing it, to then ultimately coming to the place where I'm in this mediation conversation waiting for the outcome to determine whether I was going to court the next day or whether this thing was going to settle for an exuberant amount of money. Was just noticing, oh, okay, how am I being here? And how would future Jamin love to be able to tell this story about how I responded and showed up inside this moment of adversity? Okay, show up from that place. And allowed that moment in time, which was quite particularly intense and had real-time meaningful impact on my future, of going, okay, how is this an opportunity to grow and expand from this experience and have this be an inspiring story to tell of what it looks like to show up in fullness, and be able to be powerful in responding to anything that shows up in life. So it's a broader way of kind of speaking into, I believe that this is a meaningful and helpful definition of success and an approach to living a big, rich, and expansive life.
There's thanks for sharing that. There's an element of you that I really appreciate here, which is how that definition expands to life, not just to business, not just to impact, but life. Look, you're up to things, you're doing things, you're living life for you. I'm going to say living life in a big way, but I also get you're living Jamin's life,
Yeah.
And as I hear this, you said something about showing up in fullness, and powerful enough to show up with anything that happens in life. And I really, I recognize, as you were saying this, what was going on for me was oh, there have been times where I'll limit myself in terms of the amount of success that I'm even willing to pursue, because I'm but what if, yeah, go ahead. It looks like there's something that wants to flow through you.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, it's the what if, right? That keeps us small. It's the what if that gets in the way of living into our potential and discovering how extraordinary can this experience of life truly be? How much impact can I possibly have? It's that low key, mostly unacknowledged what if that that truly gets in the way of people saying yes to what's possible in this experience.
So I'm going to ask some questions here, because I can imagine someone's watching to this point, there's just curiosity. So from my standpoint, I'm there's agreement, an alignment in there. Now I think there's curiosity. So I want to make sure I'm speaking to that. You're obviously practiced in this yourself. If someone's listening to this and realizing hey, actually, I do want to be able to to build my nervous system, to build this somatic body, and to be in that space of choosing being in response, because you also use the word responsible. So I heard those two things actually align very well in my head. Being in response to these moments here, what's something that you would recommend to like get them started down that track?
Beautiful question. So first of all, the context and the presupposition in which where we come from when we engage with this work is the foundation. And that is specifically that we must be 100% responsible for our emotional body and for our emotional experience. The first step is like, if we're in the place, if we're in victim consciousness around our emotional discomfort, in other words, we project our emotional discomfort onto external factors, circumstances, other people, that immediately is a shutdown for growth and expansion in this capacity. First and foremost, we must take 100 and complete responsibility for our emotional experience, and then be willing to get curious about what is at the source of this emotional discomfort that I'm experiencing. And what you'll also notice here, that's also, I think, a useful distinction in exploring this, is that most people relate, or societally we're taught to relate to emotions as positive and negative, good and bad, right and wrong, versus emotions are simply emotions. They come and go like the weather, and there is only two kinds of emotions: comfortable and uncomfortable. No good, bad, right, wrong, bad, or indifferent. It is just comfortable and uncomfortable. So first and foremost, we need to acknowledge that my emotions, or my emotional experience, is mine to own, and it is not anybody else's responsibility. I need to get curious about my emotional experience. And then from this place, be able to have enough compassion for our emotional experience to be able to relate to it as something that is either comfortable or uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is generally acknowledged as undesirable. Why? Because it's uncomfortable and we want to get rid of it. And then not only do we want to get rid of it, we want to project it onto somebody else so we don't have to be responsible for it. But if we're able to then go, hey, okay, this is my experience and it is uncomfortable. First point from this place is, once we've acknowledged I'm experiencing an uncomfortable sensation in my body right now, is then being able to go, can I stay here? Can I stay here? Can I be with this discomfort? From this place, we just want to cultivate the ability to breathe and be. Yeah, okay. Fear there, anger there, shame there, embarrassment there, guilt there, jealousy there. Can I stay here? Okay. All right, now that I've settled the nervous system, because generally this is like going to come from an active, we're going to notice this when we're in an activated state. In other words, like, hands might be trembling, heartbeat might be racing a bit faster, like the thoughts might be racing. Can I stay here? Can I be here? Once we've now down-regulated and got ourselves back to a place of like, okay, I'm just in tune and in touch with what my body's experiencing right now, and I'm not so much all up in the head. From this place, we can then get curious and just ask ourselves the question, okay, where might this be coming from? Where might this be coming from? And then there, you're going to have a multiple, granted you're willing to be inside a meaningful reflection, you're going to have a multiple different layers that are going to show up. One, it could be at the surface layer. It's just going to be like, that was a frustrated expectation. That person said that they were going to do this and they didn't do it. And that's had an impact on me. Okay, so I'm noticing that's at the source of the anger. Okay, fair enough. That might be one layer. And yet, what is it that then has us then be in that anger and projection about that? Maybe you're running a story about that person. They're untrustworthy. They're unreliable. I can't count on them. It could be something like that. And then that could then lead to some kind of cascade of like it could activate like something about not being able to trust people, and activate a deep story that was as a wound from childhood, which is where pretty much all of our triggers stem from. It's like this unresolved childhood stuff of like, dad didn't show up for me. Dad said things that he would do and he didn't follow through. I can't trust the masculine. Now I'm over here and my best mates just let me down, didn't follow through. And then that story is being activated. And I want to project that onto men can't be trusted, or the masculine can't be trusted. And then it perpetuates this story, but if we can actually get curious and go, oh, okay, there's anger. Where is that actually coming from? Well, I'm noticing mistrust in this person. Okay, like what's actually at the source of this? If I couldn't trust dad growing up, he didn't follow through on his word. All right, now we've got some fatherhood wounds that we need to dive into and heal and resolve. And then if we're actually willing to go as far as actually doing that work and getting resolution with that wounded inner child, well, now we actually might even have the space to come to a place of not just forgiveness for dad, but then forgiveness for that person, more compassion for that person, and then a capacity to actually to actually get to the place where we're not even triggered by that person not following through on their word, but simply observing that as something that's taken place, and then deciding whether we move into a clearing conversation with that person or let it go. So I'm going to pause there, man, because that was a lot. But actually, no, perhaps I'll just do a quick recap just so people can kind of get it. So first and foremost, we want to get emotions are ours to own, and it is not fair to project our own emotional discomfort being caused by somebody else. We need to own, this is mine, and I'm being activated by something here. That's the first part. The second part then is also being able to relate to it from a place of emotions are either comfortable or uncomfortable. They're not right, wrong, good, bad, positive, negative. It's comfortable or uncomfortable. From this place then, when we're experiencing an uncomfortable emotion, question is, can I stay here? Can I be with this? Great practice to breathe, down regulate, come back to center, and then be inside curiosity and asking yourself the question, where might this come from? What is at the source of what might be at the source of my emotional discomfort? That would be the recommended sequence of events. This may require you to remove yourself from the place or space, because if you're in a triggered place, you don't want to, you might not have the capacity to do all of this, but you might want to remove yourself or hold that emotional experience and then park back and be in the inquiry later. But that would be the process. And then depending how deep you want to go with this, there's a multitude of things that you can dig up, because every triggering moment exists as an invitation to go deeper and discern what's truly at the source of this moment of discomfort.
David, I'm going to let that sit there right here, because it's important. Thank you for the recap. Thank you for taking that in here. I am curious, for someone that wants to go down a pathway of building their somatic body, like, are there any resources that have been really important for you? Any books or any things that you come to? And then we'll start wrapping up for today. I'm like, I want this now. I actively look at it, but I like what I feel is, I'm like, I go through this the way that I go through most things, which is I'm going to show up and then I'll learn in the moment, and I'm like, and there's also other paths. So I'm deeply curious. Like, are there certain people who really had an impact on you, or any books that have really, or resources that have really struck you around this?
Yeah, beautiful question, man. So there's quite a profound book that changed my life that threads into this, and it is the book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. She's a profound influence in the coaching space and the personal development space, and she's got a very, very simple framework for facilitating meaningful inquiry and inner healing with the work that she calls the work. So that is the book Loving What Is by Byron Katie. Broadly speaking, the work around Tantra. So I've done a lot of work around Tantra, and there's obviously many different domains and disciplines of exploring Tantra, but specifically the work around breath, movement, and sound as a way to move emotion and to get more in tune and in touch with what is alive in our body and what is our sensory experience. And then also cultivating the ability to bring language to it is stepping into tantric spaces that are less focused around sex and sensuality, but more centered around healing, like healing the body and healing our stories and our disempowering narratives that we have societally at large beyond just sex and sensuality. So I'm a big proponent of tantric exploration. With that though, definitely recommend you do your homework and get referral versus just diving into any container that's created, as it does lean into some pretty vulnerable parts of people's lives. So you certainly want to make sure that you're being held by someone who's done a deep level of work. So tantric spaces. And then the other is work around inner child. So really looking at leaning into and cultivating relationship within a child. And perhaps, Niiamah, I can send you through some specific references or resources around that, as opposed to naming just one specific resource, as cultivating compassion and patience and a relationship with our inner child is profound work, and gives us so much access to forgiveness, particularly for our parents and for our past self. And ultimately that then just gives us the ability to be more present in life. And as I'm committed to cultivating a bigger, more expansive somatic body, to be able to be with more of life without being activated.
Well, Jamin, I thoroughly appreciate you. Thank you for that. I will take any resources you have on it. It is important what you say. I appreciate your own level of depth that you've gone to it, and bringing that into space with both me and the Outliers Edge community here, right? Look, we've had an amazing conversation. We just talked about like one thing in terms of like how you look at the world, how you go about the world, but I do see like where it drives down into core of like your definition of success. If someone was interested in continuing down the journey with you, whether it's doing a program with you or continue a conversation with you or some sort, what's the best way for them to do that?
Beautiful. Thanks, man. Thanks for asking. Of course, I mean, just on your basic, your standard socials. So Instagram @Jamin Heppell, Facebook Jamin Heppell, and then specifically for in the context of coaching or being inside programs that I am leading, check out Mountains and Marathons. So just mountainsandmarathons.world. That'll get you to our landing page, and you can check out what we're up to there. Or if you're more curious about being on a deep holistic journey of transformation and running a marathon or climbing a mountain somewhere epic in the world, you can check out the Mountains and Marathons Align Leadership Program. Our next edition is the Outback Australia Marathon Align Leadership Program, which will be kicking off in January or early February 2023.
Lovely. Well, right, we're here. I have to ask you this one question. If there was a message that you're going to leave to yourself, maybe even just one sentence that a future Jamin would come back and listen to, it'll be like the perfect message for that time. What's the message you want to leave for yourself right now?
Keep listening, keep taking aligned action, and keep having fun.
So it is. There we have it. Jamin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for spending time with us here today. I appreciate it and love you, man. All right.
Yeah.
Be well.
Love you too, brother.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.